Hi, I'm Jason Ward from MakingStarWars.net, and today I'm going to talk to you about Star Wars The Mandalorian, Episode 1. If you don't have Disney Plus yet and haven't seen the series, there's going to be spoilers for you. And there might be some spoilers from stuff that comes later in the season, potentially. There's a rumor going around I want to talk about just briefly, and it could pan out, but it might not. All right, so let's just dive into this. Up front, I've been waiting for a live-action Star Wars television series since 2005, when George Lucas said they would be doing something. And then that something was to be Star Wars Underworld, which was the television series that McCollum and Lucas never were able to get going. They were supposed to have an HBO deal, and it kept falling through, and it just never happened. That series was going to delve into the crime world and how the crime world itself was connected to the Rebel Alliance and the Empire, and how all of this economic ecosystem pretty much made the rich richer and the poor dead. Star Wars The Mandalorian picks up on that kind of vibe, but obviously it's completely disconnected from the original Lucas premise. I liked how the series, though, managed to start off with giving us a little bit of that without beating us over the head with it. What is life like after Return of the Jedi? It's not great for the people that aren't on Coruscant, and it's not great for the people that are, you know, in the lawless areas like Tatooine. And so we get a kind of a vibe of what that's like, and it's pretty cool because it gives us something that it gives us an era of Star Wars we always thought was really kind of civil. You know, if you read Heir to the Empire, it's like the Empire falls, and then it's like, oh, things are kind of chill. Not really. That's not how it happened. And I like that. I think it's better. Up front, before I forget, I just want to say too that Dave Filoni is a really good live action director. I always knew he was a good director. We have so much evidence of that from Star Wars The Clone Wars, especially, you know, when he was pretty much directing cinematic style Star Wars. But you had George Lucas there the whole time, and it was never really clear exactly who did what was what, and that kind of stuff. And even on this production, I'm sure, you know, Favreau and Filoni and all the directors with Taika Waititi are all working together to kind of like make sort of like a peer review group kind of thing going on, and I'm sure it all works out in that way with Favreau being the showrunner and stuff. But you can't take that from Filoni. That the episode is solidly directed from start to finish. The action is just really, really well done. And I'm guessing that with Star Wars having so much previs, it probably was a kind of a seamless transition for him just to have to go and do the previs and then show up and set it up and work it out. So I'm pleasantly surprised, but not surprised at the same time, if that makes sense. I like the weirdness of the episode as it started. You know, when you have that little dude like going doo-doo-doo-doo and calling the cars, like the comedy of it was funny. And Star Wars for me has always been like a really kind of like cool and badass kind of thing, but it's set up with these crazy eccentricities that are just absurd. And that was one of the moments that I really, really dug. And I liked how we kind of had that that one dude from Sarah Silverman program as the driver. And I was like, oh, it's that guy. And I was super jazzed, but then he died right away. And I was like, oh, that sucks. But at the same time, it was pretty funny. So that was nice. I like that the series or the episode had a good mixture of comedy with that kind of tough, rugged, sort of stoic Star Wars vibe. Because the truth is, it can get kind of boring if you just have somebody being very serious the whole time. I was apprehensive about the series being about a Mandalorian up front because, like, I like general Star Trek stuff, but I find, like, Klingon culture to be boring when it's just like, on there, and it's just like, it doesn't mean anything. It makes characters do things that the writers want them to do that are stupid. And this didn't do that too much. I kind of saw elements of that in the previous Star Wars animated shows. Not in a bad way, not in a huge way, but it was there at times. And on this right here, it's more about like the restoration of his culture after the war. And that was cool. I liked that a lot. I liked when you see that he kind of has money. He's not a bounty hunter who's all about just, you know, getting cool stuff and having space bling. You know, he wants to fund these children, these families. He wants them to have, you know, a chance. And this ties into stuff that I think is going to make the character kind of have a deeper heart to it. Because at first when you're watching the series, you're like, this feels heartless, and I didn't really connect with it in certain ways up front. As the episode went on, I felt that I started to see, okay, I see where they're going with this. Like, and then I started to see, okay, this guy, you know, there is more to him. And like when we get to the stuff with the Ugnaught later on, when you see him kind of like, you know, having to try and hearing about the Mandalorian past, and then when he you know, melts down, gets his pauldron, and then funds the kids, and then at the very end that we'll talk about later. Like all of this stuff, it makes him where his character does have meaning. There is a reason that he's doing this. We're not just watching somebody, you know, make money in space that doesn't mean anything. It actually has meaning because there's heart behind it. How it's set up with why he does what he does, I think that the motivating factors work. Up front in the very first scene, when he walks into that tavern, it's like the thesis statement of the series. This is badass action Star Wars. You know, he saves the Mithril character, but the Mithril character is his bounty. And by the way, Horatio Sands as the Fishman Mithril was really good. Like, he acted that sleazy character seamlessly. It was very well done. And he was a fishman. It didn't feel like Sci-Fi Channel acting, if that makes sense. You know, like on the really like low budget shows. They could have went that way. They could have not cared, but it was really, really well done. And I was pleasantly surprised by it. And I liked how we used that one bounty to kind of like introduce us to the whole world of the Mandalorian in a very short time. You know, he gets him onto the Razor Crest, which I thought was actually really cool too. When I heard stuff about carbon freezing and stuff like that, I wasn't that into the idea. I was like, yeah, that sounds like convenient. It sounds like, oh, Boba Fett had a guy in carbonite and all that. It worked though. When the Mithril character tries to sleaze his way out by pretending to have to go to the bathroom or the restroom, and he goes in there, we get to see the Mando space toilet, which the 14-year-old in me was laughing. My little kids were laughing about it too. And it, you know, it was cool to like actually see that addressed in Star Wars. It's not important, but it was funny. He lets his bounties hang themselves. You know, he's sneaking around and he like literally goes right where he wants him to be, and then he just throws him in there. It's like he could have been cool. He could have just sat in a chair and flown where he needed to go and been a cool dude, but he wasn't. He tried to be sneaky, got thrown in carbonite. And there was some criticism by friends and fans about the carbon freezing stuff. I think it's important to remember that this is 5 years after Return of the Jedi. Jabba the Hutt had Han Solo in carbon freeze as a decoration for like a year. So hundreds, if not thousands, of aliens and monsters and scum saw Han Solo up there. It's no secret that you can do that if it ever was. And the first time it ever happens in the canon that I know of is in the Clone Wars, when Anakin and Obi-Wan and Rex freeze themselves to stick onto a planet. So it makes sense. It's fine. I thought the show was kind of like pure candy for me in like a nostalgic way. The very first time I ever saw Star Wars, I was about 3 years old. I could have been like really young. I was like probably 3. And there was a cable service called Select TV that we had. And we actually got it to watch Star Wars. And when Star Wars came on, it was scrambled. I watched the whole beginning of the movie like scrambled. And my dad was on the phone shouting at the cable people. They switched it on right as Luke and Obi-Wan walk into the cantina. And there were just monsters everywhere, which to the little kid me was just the best. I used to watch entire movies just to see the monster. One time, for one shot maybe, you know? And this was just hundreds of monsters, it seemed like. In Star Wars The Mandalorian, the tavern and a cantina within the space of 10 minutes. So I could just imagine the little kids watching this show for the very first time who've never seen anything Star Wars, and this is like their introduction. It's gotta be pretty addicting. I was super happy with the casting overall too. Carl Weathers, man. That was a funny scoop I had actually. And I was like, is Carl Weathers in Star Wars? Because if Carl Weathers isn't in Star Wars and I'm saying Carl Weathers is in Star Wars, that's gonna be a pretty bad one for people to forget about, you know? But I really liked when he showed up on screen, because for me, there's so much nostalgia also in Carl Weathers, you know? He was Apollo Creed in the Rocky films, which Rocky 4 was my favorite as a kid. And also he was Dylan in Predator. And like, so it was just really good. It was really good seeing him in Star Wars. It was seamless. It didn't feel weird. Like, I like Woody Harrelson in Solo: A Star Wars Story, but it's not the same kind of nostalgia. You know, he was an 80s TV actor. This doesn't feel the same. It was like an action guy. And when I see Carl Weathers, it just works for me. So I'm glad, and I can't wait to see him have action moments in the future episodes. I also like the Werner Herzog moment, you know, where he has that Flavor Flav Imperial medallion on, and he has that like little scummy kind of scientist with him with the glasses. I thought that was pretty rad. It felt like Deadwood, you know, HBO's Deadwood. It had that kind of feeling to it. There was sort of a Western kind of vibe to it, but at the same time, you could tell that there was this like civilized versus uncivilized kind of friction going down. Now, right now I'm going to talk about something that could be a spoiler. It's a rumor. I don't know if it's true or accurate, but you've been warned. So like I said, there's going to be some spoilers in this episode. And so I'm going to get into Mando's past a little bit. And when I get into the Mando's past a little bit, there's a rumor going around that I want to talk about. And I don't know if the rumor's true. I haven't been able to verify it. And so I'm just going to talk about it in the video. And so if you don't want to know anything about the next episodes, potentially, then you're not going to want to watch this review any further. But up front, I thought it was pretty rad when we saw the Mando's backstory and we saw how he was a foundling, because it ties into the whole heart of the series. We have this guy, you know, who's into saving kids. He was a saved kid, you know, but when the episode very first came on and I watched it, I was like, is this the Clone Wars era? Is this during the Clone Wars? Like, when is this? But if you look at the trailers, you see super battle droids, you see some of the ships from the Clone Wars. So it's pretty clear that those aren't repurposed Clone Wars era tech being used 5 to 7 years after Return of the Jedi. It's actually stuff from that era, probably from his backstory. So I think we're going to see his backstory kind of expanded upon. We're going to learn more about it. There's a rumor that Ewan McGregor is Obi-Wan Kenobi in this series, and he's the guy who finds the foundling who becomes the Mando. So if that goes that way, won't that be rad? I hope that rumor is true. I have not verified it. It's going around though. I've heard it a few times now, and so I don't know if it has legs or not, but that would be such a great connection between the Obi-Wan Kenobi series coming out and this one. And it would also allow people who are really casually into Star Wars to watch it and feel like they are seeing connective tissue between things, because so much of this stuff is so deep, you know, like Beskar and stuff like that. Like, if you're really deep into the mythology, like, it means something to you, but to the average person, they're like, what did they just say? So it's kind of could be a very inclusionary moment as well if that happens. But once again, it's a rumor, not verified. I didn't report it on the site as if my sources have backed it up yet. I really liked Pedro Pascal's voice as the Mandalorian. It felt like the original Boba Fett pre-special edition voice before Tamara Morrison came in after 2002 or the 2004 edition of Empire and added the new lines of dialogue. It sounded like that, but it kind of was a little bit more heroic. It didn't feel as like G.I. Joe bad guy, if that makes sense. And he did a pretty good job of adding that voice and having that voice sort of have some personality to it later on as the episode unfolded, that I thought worked really well. Another crazy scoop that I got was that Nick Nolte was playing an Ugnaught. And it is hands down my favorite scoop of all time. It is the thing I am the most proud to have ever have come to me and to have put out there, because it's absurd. And it was so rad though. He was so good. And the way I heard it was that the Stan Winston company made the Ugnaught mask, made it look like Nick Nolte in his features here and there. And then a tiny lady played the Ugnaught, but to get the lines done, they had Nick Nolte in a makeshift closet where they recorded him, and they turned that into like a little makeshift studio closet, I should say. And so they like padded the studio and put a mic in there, and he did all of his lines in a few hours, and it was really, really cool. I mean, the performance was fantastic, and I can't imagine being happier with it. You know, it was like he was like that kind of like Mr. Miyagi kind of character who knows what's going on and knows how messed up the world is, but wants his place to be better. But you could tell he has some kind of past. He's not an Ugnaught on Tatooine just because, you know, he likes the sand. I really enjoyed the moments with the Ugnaught, though, for more reasons than just Nick Nolte. And it was that up until this point, the Mando is just beating everybody up. He doesn't have any challenge. Like, he's one step ahead of everybody the whole time. But when, you know, he has to ride on the back of that creature, you know, it's like the first time he's actually tested. And he's like, hey, you know, this mythosaur, you guys used to ride that, man. Like, you guys used to ride these giant dinosaurs, essentially, and you're afraid of this little, you know, what I can't remember what they're called now. They're called blurgs. I couldn't remember what they were called for a second. He gets on that blurg, gets knocked off, and then he's challenged. He can't do it. Then the Ugnaught is like, hey, man, you guys used to ride mythosaurs. You can do this. And then he gets on it and he does it, and then that takes him to the end. I like that little story beat, that he was challenged, he overcame something, and then he ended up getting to the prize at the end. And all of that made it where I felt like something actually did happen. And it, once again, also tied back into the actual heart of the story. So it was a really, really well-crafted kind of story beat. It was done fast, it was done cliched, but it was on purpose, and it was well executed. It didn't let us get bored. It got right on with it. And then there we were at the end showdown. That end showdown fight was really, really cool. For like personal reasons, obviously, I like seeing that set. I thought it was hilarious that where I observed that set in real life is where the Mando went to observe the set. A friend of mine's like, hey, how did they not know you would end up right there? Like, they literally wrote the Mando spying on that place from right there. And I was like, I don't know. But it was pretty funny to see all of that stuff that I had been looking at for so long in the show. I almost got like cognitive dissonance looking at it, but it was really, really well done. And I was so like happy and honored to have been able to glimpse that in real life, because that moment was just golden. When the IG droid walks in there and is fighting all of those Nick-2s, and then they team up, and it was just really, really, really well done. It was really good action. It was better action than I expected on a television show. And I also, though, the one little thing that happened is I was like, hey, why is he cool with this droid when he wasn't cool with the droid in the beginning? But I'm guessing that he knows bounty droids are going to be an asset, and he probably planned on killing the bounty droid and just using it to help him kill stuff anyways, I assume. And I hope that the bounty droid's not dead. IG-11 was so good. Taika Waititi's character was fun. But I have a feeling he's going to come back, because in the trailer, the IG-11 goes to Mandalorian. And so with that in mind, that doesn't happen in this episode. So unless that was shot for the trailer itself or whatever, I would imagine we're going to see him come back. And I'm hoping that because the Mando shot him in the head, maybe he's a bit, like, you know, tougher. Maybe he's a bit more wild and free. And we had some images leaked to us and some pictures and stuff like that of Droid Gotra style robots or droids, which were droids that like bounty hunt for themselves and do their own thing. And they're kind of like L3 in Solo: A Star Wars Story. They're a bit independent. I'm wondering if the Ugnaught is going to go and then kind of maybe revive that droid, and then he's going to sort of go on his own path and become his own unique and interesting character. Because it was really cool how he didn't feel like L3 and he didn't feel like K2SO. It was like, it didn't feel like anything from the comic books. So many beats have been retread over the course of the new canon since Disney took over that I was a little bit apprehensive about the character, if I should care or not. But I liked him, and it didn't feel like it was the same, you know, bad guy, evil robot comedy constantly. The Baby Yoda moment was interesting for me because I had seen puppets that were made for the series, you know, and I did a video about it and reported on it already. So it was interesting to be able to see that what ended up on screen wasn't exactly what I saw either. So it makes me wonder, are we going to see more of these little Yoda people, or did I see the kind of on-set puppet that was used for the moments for the Mando to act against? I don't know, but I can't wait. And I thought it was really interesting how, you know, he was like a 50-year-old baby. That's pretty funny, because I know some of those. I liked how the shot was set up where you see IG-11 going to execute the Baby Yoda, and then we don't actually see it. We just see the flash as if it was shot. But in the end, he actually shot the IG droid from the side. That was pretty good. And it sets up so many interesting, cool little beats, because I imagine when that Yoda baby matures, if it's a 50-year-old baby, it's probably going to be around the end of the sequel trilogy when it's matured, when it's ready to go out and become a Jedi, if that's what it's going to be. We don't know if it's Force sensitive or what, but that would put that character as a potential Jedi for Rey down the road, which could be a cool kind of thing if it went that way, right? So like, all in all, I found The Mandalorian to be kind of like a heartless show with heart. That's how I would describe it, which is the best way to do it. If you don't like all of the mushy, sentimental stuff, it didn't beat you over the head with it, but it was there. And it gave you a reason to care about his motivations if you care about something deeper than, like, let's say a Michael Bay movie. I'm not judging you if that's your jazz, you know? That's your jam, take it. But that said, there were definitely character motivations that weren't just about making space money, that just weren't about being, like, as cool as Boba Fett. And speaking of, did you guys see that moment where he goes into the Mandalorian Enclave? Anthony Bresnikan in the Vanity Fair article pointed out that looks like Boba Fett's in there. And I saw it, and it's pretty convincing. It could just be Boba Fett's helmet, though, because we do know that the helmet was purchased in the Aftermath book. So we do see that Enclave collecting Mandalorian medals and things that belong to the culture. So there is a chance that they just purchased that helmet, and that's what that character is wearing in that moment. But it could be Boba Fett, because if he is going to become a Mandalorian, it probably would have happened by then. And he looked a little bit like, you know, he was on my diet, honestly, but I could be wrong. It was really hard to see the shot. At the end of the episode, I was left with the questions of, like, you know, why does the Werner Herzog character want that Baby Yoda killed or captured? It seemed like they wanted it killed, and then the scientists wanted it to study as well. So there could be like a Force reason behind it, you know. Maybe it is like a crazy little Jedi baby, you know. It would be around the same age as Anakin too, which a friend pointed out to me. But I also kind of think that we're going to see the Werner Herzog character for like what he is as the show progresses, because I do believe he's like the main bad guy of the season. I thought Ludwig Göransson's music was pretty rad too. That moment when they're riding the blurgs on Tatooine over those like gaps and stuff, and the end credit music was really good. Also love that on the end credits they show us concept art. I hope they do that every single episode, because that was a really nice touch, especially with Dave Filoni being involved. So yeah, I'm not dissatisfied with the series. I'm very happy with it. I am worried that The Mandalorian not talking much and just being a dude in a helmet might get boring. It's going to put a lot of the heavy lifting of the series onto those side characters who we meet, and we haven't met them all yet. So I am excited to see where it goes. If I had one criticism, it would be that it's cold at times. But the heart that it does have, if it translates through into future episodes, should be fun, and I'm on board. I can't wait to watch the next episode, and if you guys are interested, I'll do another video a lot quicker this time. I had a video error, and I just had to do this video again. And also, I will have better sound pretty soon. I bought a new camera, but the media adapter isn't available yet to do my mic directly in, so I'm having to go over the air. So the videos will get better. Also, before I forget, the Kessel Toy Run is going on right now, which is a thing we do at MakingStarWars.net, where my buddy Brandon wanted to start a charity endeavor, and I was like, I always did charitable work, and we had some falling outs with ticket vendors in the past, and I was like, what are we gonna do? And we kind of teamed up, and basically we have an Amazon wish list, and you're able to buy Star Wars toys, have them sent to the Amazon wish list. Then Brandon collects them. We give them to the Saber Guild, who are costumed characters like my buddy Sal does, and from the Rogue Rebels, and they show up dressed up as Jedi and Star Wars characters, and they give the kids who are hospitalized and their siblings who are stuck in the hospital with their families, usually, like extensively, Star Wars toys to play with. So it's a really cool thing that we do and that you could be a part of, and I hope you will help us. It means a lot, and we've had parents come and say, you know, the turning point for our kid, I think, is when, you know, the Jedi came by and then they were playing with Star Wars toys. That's when their spirits changed and then the recovery started. So it really makes a difference. We do so much self-serving stuff in fandom. It's so much about ourselves, and it's really nice to be able to do this thing. And it's really important to me, if you like making Star Wars or you just like being a good person and you want to help some kids out, please donate. You could send your own toys to that address, or you could use the Amazon wish list if you want to make it easy on yourself. Either way, it's totally rad. I appreciate the help, and if you can't contribute, maybe next year, and if you can, please do, and tell your friends about it. Also, if you like the video, make sure you subscribe to the channel, like the video, let me know what you're looking forward to in the next episodes of The Mandalorian. Let me know what you thought, let me know what worked, what didn't, and I will see you in the next video.